right? So, in 1788, the fear was that how could one representative represent 30,000 people? Today, we have one representative representing 750,000 people. So if the Anti-Federalists were to come back to life today and like saw the ratio today, their heads would probably explode. But that's a fear that they had. Which reminds me, if you haven't filled out the census, Montana has a really good chance of getting a second representative in this census. Yet Montana is like in the bottom 5 of response rates, right? So Montanans are not doing the census, for whatever reason, and we're going to miss out. We're going to lose out. We're not going to get a second representative, and then we're going to have less representation in Congress. So, there's a lot going on. We have an election about to happen, but the census is still going on. In fact, a judge ruled the other day that it had to be extended. So again, have your parents do their census. You can go right online and do it. It takes 5 minutes, maybe. Except you're me. I made my kids get out a Constitution and read Article 1, Section 2, where it talks about the census, and then we looked at the representation in Congress. And, it took us about an hour. But that's because I'm a dork. All right, let's move on. So what else are these Anti-Federalists pissy-poo about, right? They're also super pissy. Yes, ma'am?
Oh, this is just kind of random, but
Yeah.
my dad told me last night that someone came to our house to political.
Oh, they
campaign.
did? They came?
Yeah, in person, so.
What party?
He's not sure. They asked because they asked kind of random questions. They're like, are you registered to vote? And he's like,
Okay.
yeah. And he's like, and they're like, are you going to vote for Senator Steve Daines? And then he's like, yeah. And then they like left.
Okay.
So they think he was for
Daines. Yeah.
because if he said no, then they would have given him something.
Well, I can almost guarantee the Democrats in Montana are still not canvassing door to door, and the Republicans are, and I think that's a mistake, but whatever. So that's interesting. I'm curious. There's rumors that the Democrats are going to start doing that, but you guys remember Lydia? I don't think she was here. I guess there's a glacier student I taught. We did people student Lydia Dublin grade. She's a really goofy kid, but I really liked her. She's working for the Bullock campaign, and I need to call her and find out what the hell is going on. All right, let's talk about the Bill of Rights. There's no Bill of Rights in the Constitution. There's no Bill of Rights in the Constitution when the Constitution is written, right? You guys might know, what are you talking about, Mr. Wright? There's a Bill of Rights. Yeah, it's the first 10 amendments, right? The original Constitution had no Bill of Rights. Now, it had habeas corpus, it had bills of attainder, it had ex post facto laws, or prohibition against bills of attainder and ex post facto laws, but it had no Bill of Rights. Now, this pisses off the Anti-Federalists. This is probably their number one biggest beef with the Constitution, right? So they say, look, this doesn't protect rights. Its power is so general that it's going to trample on the rights of individuals. State Bill of Rights, most state constitutions have bills of rights, but the national government didn't. And it said, look, the state governments, the state Constitution, Bill of Rights are not going to protect the rights of individuals. They're not going to be able to protect the individuals from the national government. And so last bullet there, I would argue this was kind of a secondary argument, but they also said that a Bill of Rights reminds people what their rights are so that they protect them. So there's no Bill of Rights. And this is probably the number one argument, like I said, that the Anti-Federalists have. They really want a Bill of Rights. And I would argue they're probably pretty right about needing a Bill of Rights. Habeas corpus is great, it's important, but it's probably not the catch-all protector that the Federalists wanted it to be. The Anti-Federalists are probably correct here. And you know what that is? That's exciting. So the first time I took, I grew up on the East Coast. On the East Coast, people generally take the SAT, and in the West Coast, people generally take the ACT. So I took the SAT. And I remember the first time I took it, I was in this huge room with like 1,000 people. My last name was W, so I was way in the back. And I remember I was in a math section. It was like the second section. It was a math section. And it was really hard, and I don't know anything about math. So I remember I was like, okay, I'm gonna put my head down for a minute and like kind of regroup here, and then like the next thing I know, the person's like, pass your booklet to the right, and I was like, oh my God, the test is over. I've been asleep for like an hour and a half. And there's like this big thing of drool on my answer sheet, and I had to raise my hand. I'm like, oh God. And like the proctor's like way in the front. I'm like, hello, and they're like, what? And I'm like, I fell asleep, I didn't do it. And like 1,000 people are like, it was not good. But it all turned out. I'm a government teacher in Northwest Montana, so does it get any better than that? Right, so even if you feel like you didn't do very well yesterday, you're gonna be fine. You're gonna hit the jackpot just like me. All right, okay, bills of rights, are they important? What do you guys think? Yes? Yes, yeah, they're important, right? Now, remember we spent a lot of time talking about habeas corpus. Habeas corpus says the government can't put you in jail unless they tell you what charges are against, what the evidence is against you, and what the charges against you are, right? And you know, the Federalists say, like, look, that's going to be the ultimate check on the government. They can't just go willy-nilly throwing people into jail. And of course, the Anti-Federalists said, we still need a Bill of Rights. And by and large, again, I think habeas corpus, trust me, I like it, I want it, I need it. But the Bill of Rights is probably very important. And we haven't not talked a lot about the Bill of Rights, but I'm sure as you guys were nodding, you could recognize that. All right, let's talk about, hey, what was that? Hold on, let's go back here. Oh, all right, so who's this guy? Anybody recognize him? He's on the $10 bill. What?
Hamilton.
It is Hamilton, yeah, it's Alexander Hamilton, right? So him and James Madison and some other people, they're going to be the leaders of the Federalists, right? So let's quickly go over the arguments that the Federalists had. Okay, so one of the things that that the Federalists do is they quickly, once they see that there is going to be significant opposition to the Constitution, they organize, right? And one of the things that happens is Alexander Hamilton, let me quiz you, you guys should know this. What state is he from?
New York.
Yeah, he's from New York, right? So he's kind of taken the temperature on the ground in New York City, and he realizes that the Constitution is not looking good. The vote on the ratification debate that was going to be held in New York, that the Constitution was probably going to get defeated. So he kind of panics, and he starts to write these anonymous newspaper articles, right? And he signs them anonymously. He signs them Philo Publius, right? And if you know anything about Roman history, you might know that Publius and Brutus and who else was there? Cassius, I think his name was. They were the murderers of Julius Caesar. And if you guys remember, Julius Caesar was the guy who was trying to get rid of the Roman Republic, right? So these are guys who wanted to keep a Republican-style government, so they murdered Caesar, right? So when everybody in America sees that these are signed Publius, they realize that this person obviously must be in favor of the Constitution. They're in favor of a republic, right? So Hamilton starts to write these anonymous newspaper articles, right? And at one point, he writes a letter to James Madison, who's down in Virginia, and says, hey, what's up, little Jimmy Madison? How about you help me write some of these articles so that we can figure out what's going on with trying to get people convinced that the Constitution is a good thing. And Madison agrees. So Madison starts writing these as well. And he signs his Brutus, okay? And then there's also a third guy, as you guys can see there, John Jay. John Jay writes, I think, 3 of these newspaper articles. But then he's in New York City one day and he hears that there's a riot down in Battery Park. And he goes down there and he gets hit in the head with a brick. And it's bad. Like it breaks his head open. And he lives and he's fine, but he's kind of out of commission. Because turns out getting hit in the head with a brick is a bit of a major injury. Okay, so did I tell you guys my analogy for the Federalist Papers in Apple products? Okay, so the Federalist Papers are important, and they're still important in 2020, and this is why, right? So the Constitution is brief. It's 4,500 words long, right? And there's no context. They never explain why the Constitution says what it does. It just says it, right? So it says like presidents can pardon, judges serve for life, treaties have to be ratified by the Senate, whatever, right? It doesn't give any context, right? Now, you guys might know this story. Back in the 1970s, there was an engineer, a computer engineer named Steve Jobs, and he was very much influenced by kind of the modernism, architectural and design that came out of Scandinavia. Really simple lines, not a lot of complexity. He's very much inspired by this. So when he starts to develop computers, one of the guiding principles that he had was, I want to develop computers that are so intuitive, so simple, that you turn them on and you can just use them. You just figure them out. That's how intuitive they are. That you do not even need a instruction manual, right? So Apple has never, ever, ever created instruction manuals for their products. And if any of you guys have ever bought an Apple product, you'll know this, right? You get your iPhone, your iPad, or MacBook, whatever, and you take it out of the box, and there's a little pamphlet that explains how to charge it and how to turn it on. And that's it. There's no thick manual, right? And the idea is